Okay, so what I want to do today is I want to finish up Perek Daled, go back to some conversation that we touched upon last week, particularly regarding the stones, and maybe that stones will carry over to next time as well, depending on time. So what we looked at last time was, and again, you cannot escape here.
Which one do I want? Oh, thank you.
Take one that says Joshua. That's good. Yeah. So you cannot escape the connectivity between Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Exodus, which is very pertinent. When we looked at some of the textual similarities, particularly because it was Parshas Bo last week, Parshas B'Shalach this week, which are actually the Parshas of the Exodus, and we looked at similar terminology where the author here, the Navi, wants you to draw your attention to, of course, the story of the Exodus, either in a comparing fashion or sometimes in a contrasting fashion. I think we're leaning more towards the contrast, and we're going to see that certainly as we finish up this Shiur, this chapter. So we're in chapter 4, verse 15. This week I'm going to try and start in the beginning of the pasuk. Last week I started in the middle of a pasuk. It was my fault, but I was just testing. But you have a bunch of observant Jews here, so they're all over. It's great. 9 weeks till Pesach. Vayomer Hashem. So Hashem says to Yehoshua, now this is going to be the closing part of this crossing of the. You can't say sea, crossing of the Jordan River. They're just kind of like, and Baruch Hashem, we have for the first time in a long time, there's big rain in Israel today, which it's been the lowest rainfall in a very, very long time. The Kinneret has not risen at all. Hopefully today will help that. So we got nice storms. It's snowing the Hermon. So they Now we had seen that it wasn't until the entire nation has crossed over, has transversed the Jordan, that the whole time the Kohanim and the Ark and everybody kind of just staying there. And we discussed the symbolic fashion of that now they have to be on their own, so to speak. They don't have the cloud leading them. They don't have the fire. They don't have the man. And the Aron is very much a part of their lives. But this transition going from one state of miraculous existence to another state of sort of normal existence, even though anybody, even at Hayom Hazeh, who's been in Israel, says that there's absolutely nothing normal about Israel, why Israel exists, how Israel exists, how anybody can live in Israel, how anybody could figure out how to live in Israel, all these types of things, right? Just trying to get a bank account in Israel. Let's see if you can do it within 5 attempts. And I've never tried. I've only heard people who have. So connections, right? Everything is protexia. That's how it works. Okay. So he says, now tell the Kohanim who are carrying the ark, and they shall Ya'alu, arise from the Yarden. Maybe this is the original Aliyah. I don't know. We actually have seen it by Avram. It said Alu Zeba Negev. Vayitzav Yehoshua es hakohanim lemor alu min Yarden. So he commanded them, the Kohanim, and he says, go up. Vayihi ka'alos hakohanim nosei aron bris Hashem mitoch Yarden nitku kapos ragle hakohanim el hecharava ve'yashuvu mei hayarden limikamam vayelchu kitmol shosham al kol gedosav. So when the Kohanim, again, the whole phrase, the Kohanim, the bearers of the Ark of the Covenant of Hashem, when they went up from the middle of the Yarden, and when the soles of the Kohanim's feet were removed from the dry ground, removed to the dry ground, okay, then what happened is that the waters of the Jordan returned to their place and they flowed as they had done yesterday, and upon all of its banks. In other words, the Jordan River, which had been stopped way miles upstream, now all of a sudden starts flowing. Now, if you want to look at again another similarity here, which just pops off, we're going to see it in this week's parsha. In B'Shalach, we have I always say this is the first parsha I've learned how to learn. Why? What? Because my older brother's bar mitzvah parsha. Right, that's why. That's because my father used to drive us to, so we lived in Westchester and we went to school in Washington Heights, because who wouldn't? And there was a YU student that we used to drive to school every Monday, like he was home for Shabbos. We drive him to since we're going to Washington Heights, and he would give my brother bar mitzvah lessons in the car from Westchester to Washington Heights. So naturally, I had no choice but to learn Parashas Beshalach. Okay. So it says that the Jewish people, they go, Hashem says, stretch your arm out, and they're going to go, and he makes them, and they went from B'Yabasha B'Tzochayam, and it uses, I can't find it because, of course, I have it marked up in the wrong book, but it uses the word Becharava, that they go onto the dry land. Of course, here we have an hour. But in other words, this. Now, if that's not enough, this is where it gets to. This is where it really gets exciting, because it's not that common. It's not that common that the Chumash gives us exact dates. Okay, and we have a lot of dates in the Chumash for a lot of things. But if I ask you, what day did the Jewish people leave Egypt, or what day did they cross the sea? It doesn't tell us the date. We know because of the 7th day of Pesach, and we figure it out going backwards. Does the Torah tell us what day the Torah was given? Right? What are the chances? Yeah, but it doesn't say it. It doesn't say it. It doesn't actually say it. As a matter of fact, there's a big machlokus in the Gemara and Shabbos as to whether it was on the 6th of Sivan or the 7th of Sivan. So we have it accepted as the 6th of Sivan, but there's a whole lot of discussion about it. But we do know, for instance, there's only one yard site that's mentioned in the entire Chumash, in the entire 5 books of Moses. Yard sites, we know yard sites. I hope everybody knows. Nope, not even that. But Moshe actually is related to this. It's very important. My father always had on the inside cabinet of the pantry, he had a list of all the yard sites in the family. They have it in Sidurim. They put it on. They have these like Yizkor books. Koren made a beautiful Yizkor book with essays in it from Rabbi Lamb, and I think a forward from Rabbi Sachs. And you have there's a little like chart in the back you can write it in. It's important to know because now, like for my brother and I, it's up to us. Like we have to do the yard sites in the family now because my father's not here. So you have to know, and you'd be amazed that people don't know. They moms don't know, or they don't know the names. Also, get the spelling of the names of the people in your family, because right? We were just talking about your husband's yard site. It's next week. Bryna. We don't know how do you spell Bryna. We don't know, right? Because can you imagine naming a kid Bryna today? You'd be disowned in like 2 seconds. No offense, but Yiddish names. People don't love Yiddish names. What am I going to do? Okay. So there's only one yard site mentioned in the whole Torah.
Yosef, no?
Huh?
Yosef?
No. You know what? I don't even know when Yosef's yard site is. I know where he's buried.
Nachman.
I don't get to visit there too often because it's in the middle of Fauda over there in no, that's Nablus. The Fauda this season is in Jenin. Aaron HaKohen. Aharon HaKohen, and it's kind of mentioned as a by the by in the end of Bamidbar. It's in Rosh Chodesh Av. Rosh Chodesh Av is Aaron HaKohen's yard. It's the only one that's mentioned. So what? So you said Moshe. Who said Moshe?
I said Moshe.
When is Moshe's yard site?
Thought it was on Shavuos or the day of his birth
No.
or something.
Yes, it is the day of his birth. Correct. Zayin Adar. Very good. And it's Swine to the rescue, right? Zayin Adar, the 7th of Adar. Now, how do we know? How do we know Zayin Adar? So it actually has to do with this pasuk. Okay, so look what it says. And it's important because we have to know. Like for v'ha'am alu min hayarden be'esar lachodesh harishon v'yachanu ba'gilgal b'ktzei mizrach Yericho. The people came up from the Jordan on the 10th of the first month. Okay, so when the Torah says first month, what does that mean?
Nisan.
Correct. It means Nisan. So it means the 10th of Nisan, they came up and they encamped at Gilgal on the eastern end of Yericho. Now, Gilgal is a little bit far, how they covered so much distance. There's some miraculous stuff going on here, especially when we talk about how Grizim and Arev will talk about where Yosef is buried in Shechem. In that area, they have to go there for the blessings and go back. Okay, so what's the connection here? So the Gemara has this very intricate calculation because we know that Moshe Rabbeinu died. They mourned for 30 days. And then Joshua gave them a 3-day preparation period to cross, and they cross on the 10th. So we have to work backwards. So 10 minus 3 is the 7th, minus 30 days brings us to Zayin Adar. That's how we get to the 7th of Adar. And the 7th of Adar, first of all, there's always the overzealous person in shul that thinks that, oh, it's Moshe Rabbeinu's Yortzeit, we shouldn't say Tachanun. Nothing gives the Jewish neshama greater pleasure than the ability to skip Tachanun in shul. But more importantly, that is a day that is usually established for people who work in the Chevra Kadisha. Anybody's in that Chevra Kadisha volunteer or industry business, that they have sort of it's like an in-service day. It's a day where they sit and they study the laws and they review, and they have special gatherings for Zayin Adar. Okay, so here they go, and the 10th day of Nisan. Now you say, wait a minute. Why do we have to know the date? Like, what difference does it make? All right, it's nice to know when what day did your family land here in America? Some people actually know that, by the way. I don't know that, but
People who landed know what they did.
people who landed, or they have all these great stories about kind of like, when is your birthday? Well, I don't know. When I came here, and they have another birthday, have this birthday. In Europe, it was always like, yeah, I was born around Pesach time, so they have this birthday or that birthday. But some people know, they have records. Like, this is the day that we came to this country. And this is the day that we crossed. This is the day that I saw Ellis Island, so we have records of that. Okay. Do you remember the day that you went to Israel for the first time?
The year, not the date.
I know the year also, right? Because I went for the first time when I went for the year, which was, kind of bizarre. My kids look at me like I'm from outer space. What, you didn't go to 18? Like, no, I'm sorry, I didn't live such a great life like you have. I didn't know, and I had no idea what to expect. There was no internet. So what do we know? What do we know? We had Asimons, and we had, right? That I didn't speak to my parents for like 2 weeks, because like you didn't just call them. Like, you had to schedule a time that you had like a slot in the payphone where they could call you, right? I used to get mail. My father used to mail me box scores from the newspaper. By the time I would get them, they were 2-3 weeks old already. The notion that kids have like instant information, constant FaceTime, it's unbelievable, right? But I remember it was 1989, right? It was like September of 1989. First time I was in Israel. Baruch Hashem, I've made up for it since. Okay. But my kids could tell you the very first time they went to Israel. So it's an important date. So but the date? What's so important is that it's Chodesh HaRishon. Everything's coming full circle, because the whole story of the Exodus is Chodesh HaRishon, is Nisan. It's called Chodesh HaRishon because we saw in last week's parsha, HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem, because the start of the story of the Jewish people as a nation, the first mitzvah that they get is to determine Rosh Chodesh. Chapter 12 in Exodus is make Rosh Chodesh HaChodesh HaRishon. That's where it starts. So if that's where the Jewish nationhood, peoplehood started, again, as Bnei Yisrael, as a free people, now it's really coming to fruition. So hold on to that thought in your head for a second, as we'll come back to it. But that's why it's like drawing your attention. It's like, oh my God, Nisan. By the way, the date, the 10th of Nisan, is of prominent importance. Also, not because it is not mentioned specifically in Shemos in the Exodus, but the 10th of Nisan was actually the original Shabbos HaGadol. The original Shabbos HaGadol, when they were given the commandment, etc., to go and do the Karban Pesach, is Yud Nisan. I also know it happens to be both of my parents, their Hebrew birthday. Both of them. Different year. Both of them Hebrew. We figured that out one day, just like by chance. Oh, wow, cool. So if that's the case, why do we not always observe the 10th of Nisan as Shabbos, as the day? Like, why do we have to do Shabbos? Why do we call it Shabbos? Why don't we observe the 10th of Nisan? Why don't we do the Shabbos beforehand? I'm already, in case you've guessed, I'm already in Pesach mode, okay? Today is the 9th of Shvat, which means that Tu B'Shvat is coming, which means 2 months. 2 months. You know what I'm saying? I gotta go get my shmur mats already. I have to go start getting stuff rolling. We gotta get the creative stuff going. We got a lot to teach, a lot to do. Oh my God, why did you do that? I don't know, all of a sudden out of nowhere. The reason, so Chassam Sofer says that The reason why we don't celebrate or observe the 10th of Nisan as a holiday is, interestingly enough, because it's also the yahrzeit of Miriam, Hanaviah. Miriam, the sister of Moshe, we have Moshe's yahrzeit is the 7th of Adar, Aaron, which is Rosh Chodesh Av, and Miriam is the 10th of Nisan, so we wouldn't look like we're celebrating her yahrzeit, so to speak. So therefore, they kept it a Shabbat HaGadol, really in deference to Miriam. That's really an interesting point. But here we have the 10th of Nisan that they go up. And the 12 stones. Remember the 12 stones. So remember before that Yehoshua said, he actually made up his own thing. He said, we'll come back to it. But the 12 stones, we're going to leave a bunch there. And then we're going to take 12 more stones and we're going to put them up in Gilgal. And these are not necessarily the 12 stones that are Hargrizim and Avel, which we'll see eventually. Vayomer el bnei Yisrael lemor, asher yishalun bneichen macharas havasam lemor me'avadim ha'ela, v'hodatem es bneichen lemor b'yabashav Yisrael siyadein hazeh, asher hovish Hashem lekechem es mei ha'yadem bneichen aravrachem, kasher asa Hashem lekechem liyamsuf, asher hovish bnei aravreinu. Lema'an das kol amei ha'aretz es yad Hashem ki chazaka hi, leman yirasem es Hashem lekechem kol hayamim. So this is a reiteration of what we saw earlier in the chapter, and they're going to ask you, and again, mirroring the language of the Pesach Haggadah, and it will be that your children will ask, what is the significance of these things that you're doing? And you will say to them, so look at this, and the 12 stones, your children are going to ask their fathers, tomorrow, machar, the whole important thing is there has to be a machar. What's the significance of these stones? You have to inform your children saying, oh, Israel crossed the Jordan on dry land. Hashem dried up the waters of the Jordan before you crossed, as Hashem your God did to the Sea of Reeds. Here it is. See, the text itself is making the connection. Oh, Yam Suf, Yarden, which he dried up before us until we crossed, so that the people of the earth will know that the hand of Hashem that is mighty, you'll fear Hashem your God all your days. In other words, we are here. We are here in Israel after going all the way back to Genesis chapter 15, to the story in Lech Lecha of the Bris Bein Habesarim, when Hashem made the deal with Abraham, and he says, and you're going to go and I'll bring you back to the land, and then they have to go through slavery and all the year, and then 40 years in the desert, because the men didn't want to ask directions, all that, right? Now, here you are, and everybody should know the significance of this event, the import of this event, because you are going to fear Hashem, and the world is going to fear Hashem, and they know Hashem sort of follows through on his words. Now, the fact that the Torah here makes a comparison between Kasher Ashta Hashem Elokechem Liyamsuf, Yarden Yamsuf, then gives rise to another very famous cruise, a very famous chapter that we know, which is Psalm 114. When I say Psalm 114, you're like, well, which one is that? Like, unless you're like Tehillim, unless you go to the Tuesday morning Tehillim group, right? Organized by our good friend here, Rachel, right? Feel free to sign up. And she still makes it here on time. It's amazing. Okay. How many chapters in Tehillim?
150.
150, right? You have one of those like Mechulak Tehillim that you give out, like the right? Yeah.
When we did it in person, we did. Oh, yes.
How many chapters of Tehillim are there on Zoom?
It's
still 150.
It's very complicated. Can I take the fifth?
Okay. All right. I'm not trying to make controversy. I'm just curious. No, it's a very holy thing. We say Tehillim. So there are 150. So if I say to you Psalm 114, you're like,
right before Hallel.
Oh, it's actually in Hallel.
It is.
Right. Very good. See? Only an experienced Tehillim reciter would know this, or an experienced Tehillim organizer knows this right away. Okay.
I just say the same ones every week.
Right? Oh, there you go. So I'm going to until you get it right. B'tzeis Yisrael mi Mitzrayim. It's easier to sing, probably, right? We say it in Hallel. B'tzeis Yisrael mi Mitzrayim. Okay, look at this. B'tzeis Yisrael mi Mitzrayim beis Yaakov mi am loez. Haisa Yehuda lekachol Yisrael mam shalasam. When Israel went out of Egypt, Yaakov's household from the people of an alien tongue, Yehuda became his sanctuary, Israel his dominions. Okay, this is the origin of a famous piece of playground equipment, because it says Hayam Ra'av Ayanos, Hayarden Yisrael Lechar, the seesaw bled. Yeah, okay, thank you. I only have one of my children that laughs at my jokes.
Which one?
Which one do you think?
Your youngest.
No, it's my oldest. Crazy. It's sadly enough. Yeah, Racheli laughs at all my jokes, and I said, "Oh, it makes me feel good." The sea saw and fled, but look at it says, "Hayam ra'avayanos." The sea saw, which is when others when they came to the Yam Suf, like an Yam, the sea of reeds, whoosh, went ahead because they saw the Jewish people and spread apart. Hayardain Yisov li'achar. Now we've said this 800 million times plus another gazillion, right? But think about it, right? The Yarden turned backwards. In other words, it didn't run away from us, but it's like Hayarden Yisov li'achar. Heharim rakdu che'elim gevos kivnei tzon. The mountains skipped like rams, the hills like young lambs. Malach hayam kisanos Hayarden Tisov li'achar. What ails you, O sea, that you flee, the Jordan that you turn backwards? That the mountains that you skip like rams, the hills like young lambs. The most mispronounced word in all of davening. It's Eloha, but it's a dagesh in the hey, right? So it's Eloah is actually the proper way to pronounce it. Yaakov. Before Hashem's presence did the earth tremble before the presence of the God of Jacob, who turns the rock into a pond of water, the flint into a flowing mountain. Lots of like flowery. I don't know. Honestly, like if you ever, it's one thing to say Tehillim, to understand Tehillim. And if you ever ask me to give a class at Tehillim, I'll be absent that day. I mean, it's like really, you have to, some people like, I like poetry, but some stuff like, okay, it's really, I mean, it's some deep stuff there, but there we know, here we have David HaMelech in Tehillim makes a comparison of the Yarden and Yam Suf as well. But if I would ask you, what is Psalm 114 about? Is it about Exodus or is it about Israel?
Both.
Okay. Although it doesn't actually, what's the name of the chapter? B'tzeis Yisrael miMitzrayim. So what's interesting is that in the chapter called B'tzeis Yisrael, what is mentioned? The Jordan River. If I would say to you, wait a minute, Jordan River, what did Jordan River have to do with the Exodus?
Crazy.
You ever think about that? Like we've said this a million times. What on earth does the Jordan River have to do with the Exodus? The answer is the answer to any good Jewish question is another question. I ask you, what is the longest Jewish holiday in the world? Pesach. Not because Pesach doesn't end when you take out the chametz dishes. Anybody here of German Jewish descent?
That's us.
Right.
One
Do you
square.
have there's a special ceremony when we take out the chametz dishes after Pesach. It's called the Rumpelnacht. Rumpling. Not related to Rumpelstiltskin, but Rumpelnacht. It's a day, like ask your in-laws. They should know this for sure. The Dish House for sure know about yeah. So ask them, but ask them about the Rumpelnacht. So they have that Pesach doesn't end at Rumpelnacht. So no, Pesach ends at Shavuos. You know what? Pesach doesn't even end at Shavuos. Meaning the story of the Exodus is not complete when the Jews get the Torah at Mount Sinai, how many days later? When does it really end? When is the Exodus complete? Hayarden Yisov li'achar. Only when they can go into the land of Israel, that's when the Exodus is complete. It's part of a very, very long process. Geula, in and of itself, the process of redemption is never a one-time thing. It is, again, the key is it's a process. Things happen slowly. So the and again, the contrast of Yamsuf and Yarden, Yamsuf, the sea saw and fled, but Yarden, no, we have 3 days. We're going to prepare. We're going to walk across. We're going to walk across triumphantly with purpose and these types of things. Okay, let's look back. I want to just go back and touch a little bit on the stones. Touching on the stones, somebody, Dalila, she watches every week religiously and like comments religiously. I love it. So thank you for watching. I know you're watching this now. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Not now, but by the time you. As if I'm saying it right now while you're watching it, but she's watching it not live. But or maybe she is. I don't know. Maybe she's secretly. Maybe she hacked the internet. But she wants to know about. She's like, I like this idea about the stones. We talked about selling the stones, custom stones for the cemetery. She said, well, I'm actually looking into it. Maybe we'll get a group discount. But the stones is that, first of all, if we look back in at verse 9. That Yehoshua was told to take the stones from the Yarden and bring them and make a memorial, a monument at Gilgal. Okay, we like monuments, right? We like stuff. You know, we like stone. We like plaques. We like memorial. But also if you go around this country. Beautiful country that we have, or all over the world, you see all these random places. You see, like, oh, here was this and here was that, and I was in the Hoover Dam, and my son got such a kick out of it because he was allowed to say the word "dam" repeatedly, and so as any good 7-year-old would be like, "What the Hoover Dam is going on here?" Like that, like something. That's 7-year-old. Boy humor, but there's a bridge. You could drive the road of the Hoover Dam, but there's a bridge where you could walk. You park and you walk up. Where I was accosted by somebody who knew me, of course, and as I mentioned on Shabbos, and you walk up and you can walk over the whole expanse of the Hoover Dam. But that bridge, there's a beautiful monument there. It's named after 2 people, one of whom is Pat Tillman. You know who Pat Tillman is? I wouldn't expect you necessarily know Pat Tillman unless you're huge sports fans. But Pat Tillman was drafted. He was an NFL player, but he decided that to give up his playing so he could fight for our country in Afghanistan. He died. He died in defending our country. Okay, those are the real heroes of the country, not people who can catch a football, and keep their feet in bounds and make $1 million doing so. Or, bust their toe on the turf and take 5 weeks off and say, I'm gentle, whatever. But so you see that these monuments, if you go to Washington, and they're all free also, like it's such a beautiful thing to go see this, the beautiful things we have in mind. So we love monuments. So Yehoshua was told, take the stones from the Yarden. Imagine that these stones came from the Jordan River, which they crossed. But what does he tell them in verse 9? And he says, he actually he did that, but he made a monument in the Yarden itself, which we have yet to discover, or maybe it's there and there's a plaque. I don't know. So the first thing is it's the Radak in Pasuk Tes, because Pasuk Tes says that Ushtei Misrei Avanim Hekim Yehoshua betocha Yarden, and Yehoshua put them in the middle of the Yarden. The Radak says, Afa pi shelo re'inu shetzivo hakel al ela havanim achar she'asa yadana ki b'mitzvah hakel yisbarach asa. He says, we don't find that Yehoshua was actually commanded to do so. He wasn't commanded to do so, but that doesn't mean so. So this one way. This is one approach of Mefarshim to say, vayisachos lemafriya, which means, the fact that he did it must be that he was commanded to do so. Okay, there's an old question we always ask kids in yeshiva, like, how do you know that Moshe Rabbeinu wore a yarmulke? The hardest thing in the world is get my son to keep his. I'm getting a call from LL. What do we think that's about?
Amazing.
Seriously, it says LL. What on earth can they want? Yeah, okay. No, I finally got upgraded. I got that second bottle of water for free. Wait, what? I totally forgot what I was saying. What was I saying? Oh, my son won't keep his kippah on. He won't. I'm ready to staple it on his head. I've actually, as it like tied tape around his head or whatever. So how do you know Moshe Rabbeinu wore a kippah? So it says, Vayidaber Hashem Moshe Lemor. Hashem spoke to Moshe, and this is what he said. You think Hashem was speaking to Moshe if he wasn't wearing a yarmulke? Right. So that's one way of Mefarshim is the fact that he did it. Oh, it must be that he had a command to do so. which is interesting. Okay, so the notion of stones, but it shouldn't be that foreign to us to see where there's stones. Can you think offhand of another place? There's two places I'm going to mention. One of them for sure you've heard of. One of them maybe not. Aside from what we saw last week of him telling that he had to write the entire Torah on stones and cover it in plaster and then put it in Har Grizim and Har Eval. There's another time, a monumental time, in which stones were used, and we have to understand the symbolism of those stones. Why do we put up stones at a grave? You ever think about that? I mean, one is an obvious reason. So you know which one to go to.
Well, stones are timeless. They don't erode.
They can erode.
Wash away.
If they're big enough, hopefully they won't erode in our lifetime. Right? Why do we put up a stone, and why do we put a stone on top of a stone? You ever wonder that? Especially if they're custom-made stones with the name on it that you got at a group discount, Delila.
Yaakov's dream.
Yaakov's dream had the stones, right? So of course we have the famous medrash. Now, so Yafit said something excellent here. Let's look at that. Yafit's also just fresh back from Israel, so she has the Avira Da'ara. He goes up, he's running away, and it says Vayikach me'avnei hamakom vayasem mirash yosav. He took from the stones of that place and he placed it under his head. And then when he wakes up, and it says Ve'ha'even hazos asher samti matzeva. Right? He took the evan, he took the stone. It said stone. It's stone. How did it happen? What happened? What happened? Come on. Obviously that's what happened. The stones were fighting with each other. And they said, I want the tzaddik to put his head on me. I want the tzaddik to put his head on me. And they all became one. And that's why he went from stones to stone. You may kill me for this, but I don't think that literally happened. I think maybe the Torah is speaking figuratively. Okay, but it doesn't give us a number there. And first of all, this is pre-12 tribes, but there's a good thing with stones. But why do we put up a stone when lo aleinu, we lose a loved one and we have to go to so obviously we want to know where to go, but it's what is the word that we for monument is matzeva, right? Mimi, what's make matzeva, right?
אני מחפשת את הקשר בין אבן למצבה, אני לא יודעת.
אז מה השורש של המילה מצבה?
השורש?
כן.
י' צדיק ב'.
כן, והנה סולם
אבל זה שם עצם.
מוצב ארצה.
Standing,
correct. אתם ניצבים היום. Standing meaning, like you said, everlasting. Now, I know you said not eroding, but what you meant to say was everlasting. Everlasting, it's an everlasting monument. It's a testament to, which is why we don't just put up a stone with somebody's name on it. We write nice things on it. Like a big art. It's a lot of pressure to know like what, and ask, and you could do this exercise, when you're by yourself and you're feeling kind of, I don't know, about yourself. Say, what do you want them to write on your matzeva? It's like one of those English essays that you get in school, like write your own obituary. But let's say you're limited. What would you like them to write on your matzeva? And by the way, if you know this is part of our ethical will conversation we had with Erica a while back, tell this to your children, tell this to your families, so that they don't have to struggle over it. Tell them what you want. I wrote a beautiful matzeva for my father. I'm very proud of it. Very proud. I really did. So it was on the Yehoshua Shiur. I put a picture of it. It's on YouTube. You can look at it. It's at the very beginning of the shiur. You don't have to watch the whole shiur because I gave the shiur at 3:00 in the morning from Israel, whatever it was. Anyway, but I worked hard on it. And it was in English, and there are people who do them in Hebrew with this flowery language. They take a pasuk with the name. Beautiful, beautiful. When I go to the cemetery, I'm always looking at gravestones. Okay, so it's an everlasting monument, testimony to the person, and you have a place to come visit. Now, why do we put a stone? Now, we have a kesher ben even lamatzeva. Okay, this is something beautiful. This is Rav Goldvich told me this. He told me this on a plane. Well, maybe that's why Allah was calling me. While we were on a plane, flying to Israel together, and I had been trying for a long time to get him to come here, and we weren't unsuccessful in connecting. So finally, at 30,000 feet in the air, we made the kesher. We said, you know what, you're going to come for Shabbos. So he told me this about Evan. Evan is a kesher between Av and Ben. The word Evan, Av and Ben. It also stands for Av Ben Neched or Em Bat Nechda. That's what the letters stand for. 3 generations, mother, daughter, granddaughter, father, son, grandson, or also a contraction of Av and Ben. And that even though a person's earthly existence is over, but doesn't mean you can't have a connection between me and the person that was lost. And that's why we put a stone on top of the matzeva. Not only that, and this Rav Goldwith added to me, and he said that when it comes to our children, we build the foundation, and all we want is our children to take and build higher and higher upon that. So when we put a stone on top of the matzeva is much more permanent. An even could be thrown around it, but when we build on top of that foundation, yatzvut, that is the essence of life. We're saying we're taking everything that you gave us, and we're building and building on top of it. It's a beautiful thing, and it's a go-to line for every unveiling. By the way, I'm just saying this is where you can do your own unveilings now. That's the Evan. But there's another place where we have a very, very prominent mention of stones. If I ask you, what's the number one line ever uttered by the Jewish people as a whole in the history of the Chumash? Number one phrase, number one line. Nothing? Anyone?
Receiving the Torah?
Yeah, what did they say?
Not 70.
Oh, Nasav and Ishma. Nasav and Ishma, amazing. What a group. And where's that located? This is the easiest thing you'll ever remember. Where is that? What chapter and verse is that located?
21.
Thank you, Mary. All these years, I finally. It's 24/7. Exodus 24/7. How do you know Nasav and Ishma? Oh, 24/7. You use that at parties. I'm telling you, Shabbos table, it's like you're gonna be like I'm telling you, people are gonna be super impressed with you. 24/7. Okay. Now, what's interesting is that you would expect to find that phrase or that exchange in Parshas Yisro when the Torah is given in chapter 19 and 18, 19, 20. But in fact, it's at the end of Parshas Mishpatim in chapter 24. After we have all the laws about slaves and stealing and blah, 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 we go back to the episode at Sinai in chapter 24. And then Hashem, this is what's called Maimed Har Sinai and the aftermath. Hashem says to Moshe, he says, you go, Aaron, Nadav, and Avihu, and the 70 elders, and you're going to bow from afar, and you're going to go, and they're not going to go with you, okay? And then first he says, Moshe says, and he says all the things to Hashem and all the that Hashem said and all the Mishpatim. Everybody says in one voice, Kol advarim asher diber Hashem na'aseh. That's verse 3. Then, Vayichtov Moshe es kol divrei Hashem vayashkim b'boker vayivin mizbeach tachas hahar. Moshe wrote down all the words of Hashem. This is 24:4 in Shmos. And he woke up in the morning and he built a mizbeach, because they're always building a mizbeach. Ushtem esrei matzeva l'shnei masar shiftei Yisrael. And he made 12 matzeva. He made 12 pillars for the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay. And then he sent, and then right after that, we have Nasav and Ishma. So the first time that we have an episode of 12 stones is really at the giving of the Torah at Har Sinai. Let me give you one other episode, which is probably lesser known. The story is known, but the particulars are lesser known. If I look in Malachim Aleph in chapter 18, okay, this is a great, it's a great story. It's the Haftorah, which, by the way, is the Haftorah for Kisisa, because it's about the Nevi'ei HaBaal, the showdown at Eliyahu HaNavi, Elijah the prophet, and the showdown at Mount Carmel. Okay, Har Carmel. Anyone's ever been to Haifa? Right? Do we know anybody who lives there? No. And what? Yeah. So the Mount Carmel, which, by the way, one of my favorite places, the Carmel Spa, which is really, I love my wife. We just celebrated our 27th wedding anniversary. What she's doing with me, I don't know. But she does not like roads that are like windy and on a hill and have no guardrails. It's like a fear, whatever. Okay. So it's a big bit in our family that we make fun of her for these things and whatever. But like no, but the road to the Carmel Spa is a road she doesn't like. Okay, so
Beit Oret, כן?
she was on the floor like crying, like saying to Hillel as we're driving. I'm thinking like I'm going to the Carmel Spa. So we went once straight from the airport to the Carmel Spa for a couple of days, and first of all, beautiful. They don't allow kids. No, nobody under 16 is allowed. And then it's like you can't have your phone down in public. Another big plus. And we had gotten in and it was late, and they're like, "No, everything here is about else." I'm like, what? Here it's about else. I'm like, what? Oh, about health. They're trying to say health. Okay. And everybody's like, "You gotta go. The food is amazing. It's so good." I'm like, "Come on, how good could it be?" I'm like, "Oh my God, the food is amazing. It really is." And people you walk around in your bathrobe like all day, right? So, but you could look down, but that Mount Carmel, that's why with the Carmel Forest, we had that terrible fire there a number of years ago. And then you can look at Haifa and you can look at the Mediterranean from there. But that showdown on Har Carmel is, I don't know if it's actually where the spa is. I remember we would like try to break into the kitchen. Like, "Do you guys have a vending machine?" They're like, no, this is about else. There's no, I'll give you some wheatgrass tea. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with that? I'm planting a garden. Anyway, so there, Eliyahu has this showdown with the prophets of the Baal. Okay. And there's 450 of them, and they go, and then finally they have the whole and it was new time, and he cries out and he says, "Kir b'kol gadol kilakem hu kisech hisik derech lo ulay Hashem yikatz," and they call out in a great sound. It's et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then finally, Eliyahu says to all the people, "Draw near to me," and all the people drew near to him, and then he repaired the ruined altar of Hashem, because the Nevi'im, the Baal, obviously Eliyahu was proven right. And what happens? Vayikach Eliyahu shtem esrei avanim ki mispar shiftei bnei Yaakov asher haya dvar Hashem elav lemor Yisrael yeshem echad. Eliyahu took 12 stones, corresponding to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, to whom the word of Hashem came, saying, "Your name shall be Israel." He built the stones into an altar for the name of Hashem. He made a trench large enough to plant 2 seahs of seed around the altar. He arranged the wood. He cut up the bull. He put up the wood, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Now, if we look at those 2 episodes of giving of the Torah, Ma'amad Har Sinai, when the people right before the Nasav and Nishma, and a test of the false prophets of the Baal, and Eliyahu single-handedly, he comes in, and we say, "Kol dem hamadaki yishama," the whole bit, and everything, Rosh Hashanah, all kinds of meaningful stories come out of that. What's the connection to it? What do you think is the connection between the stones there? What do the stones represent? And this is what's like pretty important, what our verses are getting at. That I think that the stones represent a strong connection. And when you want to have something that represents strength, a connection, when you get married, okay, you're not gonna, when you're gonna give a ring, what do you give? You give a diamond, right? That's still acceptable. Is that allowed? Am I allowed to say that? Are you still allowed to say that a man is allowed to propose to a woman with a diamond? Is that allowed? Or do I get canceled now? I have no idea.
Say that here.
I have no idea what I'm allowed to say or not say anymore. I don't know. But where I come from,
This is a safe space.
Oh, thank you. I feel heard. Oh boy. But if a man gives a woman a stone, and a very strong one, right? A diamond, but it represents an everlasting bond, a connection to mark this occasion. Now, I hope not, but I think the day after the wedding, you don't take off the engagement ring and put it away. No. You wear it, until you get a bigger one. You wear that and you wear that and you wear it forever and ever. It's not marking a past event, it's an ongoing event. So Eliyahu Hanavi had to show to the people, look, I'm putting down these stones because maybe you guys lost you doubted it. You weren't sure. Now, okay, I proved to be right. I proved I was going to be right, but you guys went off track. And you went off track. We need to figure out something to mark that, there is this strong connection between the Jewish people and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it's the land, but it's also, most importantly, the Torah, which is why when the giving of the Torah was marked by the stones, every time one of the Avos, when they had something big happen to them, what did they do? They made a mizbeach. They made something out of stones, or Yaakov, I think, made no less than 4 matzevas. 4 different matzevas that he had. And also for us, we mark stones. We take stones to mark our ongoing connection. When somebody dies and they're in the cemetery, are we done with them? No. Sometimes people are closer to the cemetery stones than they were to people in their lifetime. And they're going and they're crying and they're doing it, and we have a custom that we invite. If you go to when I look at stones, what's the nicest thing to me is when I see, old weather-worn, wedding invitations, bar mitzvah invitations, birth announcements. People put them on the gravestones. That's a custom that we have to actually physically invite them with us, right? So, I'll tell you, this is a really good joke. This is also to go when you quote your 24/7 and you want to have a humorous part of your presentation. So you say this, the guy goes to the cemetery and he says, he sees somebody, die davening over a stone. And he's like, why did you die? Why? Okay. And he's very moved by it. And he says, he walks up to me and says, are you okay? He's so upset. He says, was this a relative of yours? He says, no, we weren't related at all. He continues, why did he die? Why did he die? He said, was this a friend of yours? He's like, no, actually, we didn't even know each other. He says, but why are you davening so hard? Is somebody you're not related to, somebody I know? He goes, no, it was my wife's first husband. Why did you die? Anyway, am I allowed to say that? Okay. Yes. But it represents, so here are the stones, and maybe that explains why. Yeah, we left one in the Yarden, but we also have to take it with us. We have to take the matzeva with us as an everlasting. This is not a one-off thing, which, by the way, when we talk about Yam Suf, how many times a day do we refer to the Exodus? I don't know, about 1 million? About 8 million? Because it's a constant presence in our lives, the divine providence and Hashem overlooking and overseeing the everyday doings of his people. It's not like, oh, God created the world and left. God created the world. And if you don't believe me, look what he promised to his people, et cetera, et cetera. So this is on this continuum of how Hashem took care of his people and he promised. And guess what? Here we are in Eretz Yisrael. And this is represented by the stones, the matzeva, the avanim. But these are more than avanim. These are huge monuments. Now, again, I don't know. I know the scientists have thought that maybe they found them. I don't know. But the relationship between the Jewish people, God, and the land of Israel is one that is quite dynamic. It is ongoing. It's not, it happened, it was. Never in the past tense, it's always in the present tense. And that's what the stones represent, which is why, so even when people leave this world, and, maybe we can't have a conversation with them, but the relationship is very much ongoing. Just think about people, if you have loved ones that you've lost, and think about how much influence they have on you after they've gone. Sometimes more than when they were here. For better or for worse. But so that's the notion of the stones. We're going to see, maybe I'll spend a little bit more time on the stones going forward when we look at Har Grizim and Har Eval, but then we can get into chapter 5 and we'll see some actual battle stuff is going to start happening, and then we'll see some conquering and we'll get some more maps. This is really very, very exciting. But everyone have a wonderful day. To literally the best. All your friends here say hi. They can't wait for your vacations to come here live. Okay, bye.
Yeah, totally.